Say, what's important to the average new conservative, I guess is what you might call that individual? The Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty will, in partnership with Heart and Mind Strategies, released Bridging the Gap, polling tracking that is polling, I should say, polls that are tracking the sentiments of populist-leaning conservatives. Kyle Koenen is Will's policy director, and he joins us now with a closer look at the numbers. Kyle, my friend, how are you? It's been a while.
I'm doing well, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, anytime. You guys got a standing invitation here. We always like to know about what Will is doing and the good work you have been doing. Now, what is this poll? Because you mentioned it's about populist-leaning conservatives, and I guess maybe we need to start with that definition because, I think to some minds a conservative is a conservative, but obviously there is no set conservative. We all have varying degrees of our conservatism. What is a populist-leaning conservative?
Yeah, so the way we did this report, and I maybe just want to talk about why we did it. I think the center of gravity in the conservative movement has kind of taken a little bit more of a populist direction in both tone and policy in recent years. And a lot of those shifts are driven by legitimate concerns that folks have. So the way we defined populist in this poll, we kind of looked at what are things that people distrust in institutions. And I think these things would kind of define how we define them. People who kind of believe the system is rigged, and people like them don't stand a fair chance in the system. Politicians of both parties are serving themselves over the people. And the institutions that our country was built on can't be trusted to do what's right. I think that's a general, we basically asked 6 questions, and if folks answered 3 of those 6 questions, they kind of got grouped into this populist bucket. We also asked whether or not they self-identify as MAGA. Of the people we asked, about 40% of them said they consider themselves MAGA voters. So.
Yeah, I definitely would put myself in the category of all of those things that you mentioned. I have a great deal of distrust for our government institutions, probably because I've covered them for so long as a journalist. I have concerns that we have a uniparty out there that is ultimately not working for the individual American's best interest, working for their own self-interest. So what did you find ultimately from this group of conservatives? What are they thinking, particularly as we get closer and closer to a critical midterm election?
Yeah, so not surprisingly, I think economic issues rise to the top of the list here. We've seen that in some of the statewide polls, like the Marquette poll, amongst the broader populace, but that rises to the top here as well. So inflation, cost of living, and the economy was a top issue for about 48% of respondents. Other pocketbook issues kind of were in that top 5 as well. Healthcare came in at 4th and taxes at 5th. Those are all things that are affecting people's bottom lines. And I think, any messaging that our movement does that doesn't acknowledge that people are going through economic pain first is going to lose this audience. One thing that we saw as a huge wake-up call for conservatives is maybe some supportive policies that you and I wouldn't agree with, specifically as it relates to markets. And I'll be happy to get into that a little bit more.
Oh, I'm sure. And actually, let's go there because I know that, Trump policy is tariffs. And there are a lot of fiscal conservatives, particularly free market conservatives, very concerned about that and the impact that that can have on an economy. I think on the other side of that question is a lot of people, like you say, who feel like not only their institutions are screwing them, foreign countries are screwing them, and they're getting all of the advantages where, the American business owner and the American worker are not. And I think that is still a big issue and a kind of a big dividing line, isn't it?
Yeah, not surprisingly, support for tariffs among this group was very high, about 80%. But I think where my level of concern comes in is on a number of different issues. So where there's strong support, or at least some moderate support, for supporting federal intervention in markets. So almost 60% support some or absolute federal control of prescription drug prices. 54% believe the federal government should have some control in setting gasoline prices. And this one really did concern me, is although it's a minority, there's still a third of this poll people support government intervention in corporate profit margins. So I think that should serve as somewhat of a wake-up call that these folks want real solutions and not just kind of platitudes. And if we don't kind of address that and give them real solutions that are market-oriented, that can fix things like healthcare and housing, they may end up endorsing some of the same policies that, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders may like. And that should be a wake-up call that we really need to sharpen our pencils and get some solutions out there.
That's a big, big issue that I want to drill into a little bit deeper. We are talking with Kyle Koenen. He is Policy Director for the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They have a new report out, some interesting polling that tracks the sentiments of populist-leaning conservatives. And ultimately, this poll is really about how do you connect the conservative movement, the different elements of that. But the populist movement in America obviously has emerged in the MAGA movement and Donald Trump. But there seems to me to be, if you're looking at the free market conservative versus where some of these folks stand in that populist-leaning conservative side of things, they're talking about, it would seem to me, a lot of the things that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Francesca Hong are talking about. That's concerning to me. How did we get there?
Yeah, I think as I went back to, if you look at the top issues that these folks care about, it really does come down to a feeling of genuine economic pain. And they're not thinking about this through an ideological lens. So I think the way to kind of regain their trust and present free market solutions is by talking about it in relatable terms and not in kind of the jargon that I guess our movement has been used to, and talking about Milton Friedman. As much as we all like him, that's not going to get your average voter to move. So I think one of the ways we've got to think about this is talking about these things in relatable terms. So let's just take the topic of regulation. One of the strongest messages we tested was on overregulation. And when people see it's overregulation framed in the sense of costing small businesses jobs, making it harder for them to thrive, especially when the big businesses may have, the resources and time and assets to play the game when it comes to too much regulation. That's one of those things that I think people can relate with, and we can start to draw them back to a lot of the same free market principles that we care about, instead of talking about, esoteric regulatory codes or this or that and the other thing.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note, first and foremost, though, Kyle, I do have a poster of Milton Friedman up, hangs over my bed, and it's right next to my Samuel Alito poster. They're both playing Frisbee in it. It's peculiar, but I think we can bring the Milton Friedman concepts without, again, I think the word here is esoteric. Even using the word esoteric kind of distances people. So how do you go about communicating? For instance, I don't know if you caught it, but we had a conversation with Senator Johnson. The senator has now taken over as the Budget Committee chairman in the Senate. And you know that Ron Johnson is known for, if he's known for anything, it's about looking at the fiscal mess that this country is in, a $40 trillion debt. And that has so much to do with inflation, but people don't put that together, and they don't put business growth with free markets and, a cutting of red tape. So how do you do that? Because I think the free market conservative movement in many ways has failed at that over the years.
Yeah, I think one thing we learned is that this group of people doesn't trust you telling them to trust us, right? They want to see the proof in the pudding, right? So
You bet.
we
Yeah.
tested several big government, or I should say, not big government, limited government reforms to kind of get a sense of where people are at. So, 90% of people who responded to this poll support more audits, stronger transparency laws, spending caps, requiring agencies to go and look at their rules and eliminate and remove those outdated rules. So I think it remains true that you have to show them how you're going to do the work, and not use checks and balances as a constitutional principle. Sell them on it as a mechanism that keeps the politicians from getting away with it. So I think those are the ways we can really rebuild that trust. Show and apply to elections too. We did a lot of work on elections in this poll. People want to see how our elections are administered, and once they better understand that, they develop more trust in it. And that goes to things with like voter ID and citizenship verification, bipartisan poll watchers, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of work to do to, show that, and we have to be proactive in pushing these reforms. And I think we can start rebuilding that trust.
Well, as old woodenhead James Carville said years ago when he was running Bill Clinton's campaign, it is the economy, stupid. So final question for you. The Democrats have spent a lot of time, well, they're confused up and down the aisle. They don't know what the hell they are anymore. But their messaging has centered on affordability. Affordability, that's the term over and over again. Do you think they have been successful? Do you think they can win over people on the independent side of things, or people who do have a natural distrust of parties?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say that messaging hasn't resonated, right? Even when we're looking at a group that this poll, 96% of them support the President Trump, yet 48% of them are saying cost of living and the economy is their top issue. I think that issue has resonated with folks, and it's important to acknowledge it and present solutions that are going to help, people feel like their pocketbook isn't being hurt. So my biggest fear with this group is when it comes to election season, that they don't engage. And we've seen that.
Yeah.
One of the last questions we asked on this poll was, how many of you voted in the presidential election versus the midterm? And it's a 19-point difference between 2024 and 2022. 89% voted in the presidential, only about 70 voted in the midterm. So we really have to rebuild that trust, and I think it starts by acknowledging that, that genuine concern people have, and then offering real solutions.
That's tough. Those are some pretty daunting numbers, to say the least. The only thing I think right now is saving Republicans as we head closer to the 2026 midterms is just how insane the left is, and the Democrat Party has been taken over by that insanity. But as you mentioned, in this poll, there are some things that cross over, and that is problematic as well. Very interesting stuff. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. And I know that this report is now up at the website. Is that where we can find it and drill down, get a little more information?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be on the front page at will-law.org.
Perfect. Kyle Koenen, Will's Policy Director, on this new report survey, taking a gauge of what populist-leaning conservatives think. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope we talk sooner than later, my friend.
Sounds great. Thanks, Matt.